Hey everybody, I'm Mike Whalen. How are you tonight? I am trying something new because Nick made fun of me about using Skype, and we're going to try to use Zoom with Ecamm. Nobody cares. None of you care, but it's why things are going to look a little different tonight. We're going to try something new. Let me just show. I'm about to show you, Dan. Say hi to everybody, Dan.
Hey, everybody.
This is what it's going to look like. So I'm going to go back to me for just a minute. I wanted to share a couple of resources with you and talk about things that are going on real quick. So let me make sure that we are broadcasting, and I will add some comments here with resources. First, most of you who are joining the conference have done so already. Hi, Steve. Have joined the conference already, and so you should have access to both day one and day two. If you do not see day one and day two in your email, just let me know. If you have day one, there's a link at the bottom to day two. I know it's 20 hours of video, and that is a lot. And so that's probably going to be pretty difficult for you guys to keep up with. So, but I also, just for the sake of being able to get started, I wanted to create an event for tomorrow. And I'm sorry that apparently the audio is jumping around. Can anybody tell me? Dan, say hi real quick.
Hey, how's it going?
Can anybody tell me, just in the comments below, make sure that you hear me and Dan when we get to our interview. I would appreciate that, and I apologize just using new technology. But anyway, so this is a state of the industry roundtable that we're doing tomorrow. We're going to have people from the different the different sponsors of the event are going to come in. These experts are going to come in and talk to us. So there's the link to that. If you just go into that, thank you, Steve. If you just go into that and register for that, just let us know that you can push the button that says I'm going. Then we'll know who's going to be there. I want to make sure it will show up as a Facebook Live. We're going to push it as a Facebook Live via Zoom a little differently than we're doing now. Again, you don't care, but it is what's happening. And so, so you'll be able to join and have conversations. Basically, these different people who think about this stuff all the time are going to be talking about what's going on, right? You've been thinking about this a lot, but getting people who think about this every day, because you're still dealing with cases, you're still dealing with, making decisions with what's going on in your family. So I thought it'd be really cool to get these 5 people who are in the industry thinking about this all the time to come in and just talk about what's going on with clients, what's going on with policy implementation from the government, and what's going on with other lawyers. That's a big thing that I like to do, is share what other lawyers are doing. In terms of thoughts that I had, I've been thinking about this a lot. What prompted this question of expertise, which is what this book is about, the sort of the role of experts in modern society. A friend of mine who I went to the same mission as I did in Italy, he said on Facebook the other day, your default speaker has changed to built-in output, and I think this microphone. Okay, sorry. He had posted a message the other day, had a picture of Rush Limbaugh on there, and he said, I don't normally agree with Rush, but he's totally right about this. And of course, the statement was about how many people are dying from swine flu or whatever, and it's more than this, and we're all freaking out about nothing. And I don't care about the substance. What was interesting to me about it was this acceptance of information from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, and why we do that. And that book that there's a book called The Death of Expertise that talks about this a lot, that Tom Nichols wrote, and Dan Dresner's book sort of goes a little further and asks, what are the structural reasons that we don't listen to experts anymore? And he points out that there are really 2 kinds of experts the way intellectuals use it. There's public intellectuals, and they just sort of use methodology. They're scientists. They're the peer reviewers, the ones who tear ideas apart. And then there are these thought leaders who have one big idea that they see the world through this view. And basically what he argues is you need both of them. They need to be about equal, because you need people coming up with big, crazy ideas, but then you need people tearing them down, right? You've got to have this symbiosis between the 2 types. And right now, we don't have that. Right now, what he points out is that we have thought leaders are ascendant right now. And it's interesting because I sort of consider myself more the scientist person who's trying to just evaluate new ideas and have processes for thinking through things. But people have pushed me to sort of be this thought leader person and talk about the legal supply chain all the time and see the whole world through this view. And it's really tempting because when you do that, the branding is clearer, it's much easier. This is all coming back to you as a lawyer. In the book, I talk about, do you want to be an expert or do you want to be an audience building solutions engine? And although my terminology doesn't overlap perfectly with Dresner, it is interesting that the audience builder, who is the person who builds authority, connection, this human touch, right? That's what that person's job is, where the expert is to try things. That's what that word means, one who tried. So they're more using the methodology and they're tearing things down and whatever. They become specialized, but around a problem, not around a solution, right? Which is, that's why Dresner's kind of categorization doesn't really work with the way I talk about it. But the point is, if you want to be that kind of person, if you want to be the kind of person that builds audience, that builds connection, that scales and grows, you're going to be really tempted to put forth firm ideas, single ideas, put the whole world through that lens. The only thing I would say right now is, although that will lead to financial success, and there will be a lot of temptation because people will tell you how great it is and how smart you are. People love the simple argument, right? Even from somebody who's not qualified to make the argument, like Rush Limbaugh, people love that sort of direct argument, especially if it confirms something they already believe. Watch for that. Be careful with that. Make sure you seek out people who use the methodology to question you and to put you through the ringer. And those are my thoughts today. I hope that is helpful. What I want to do now is move over to Dan Garner. Dan is in Salt Lake, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, I would just ask, can you guys just confirm that you can hear me? Because both of us, because this is the first time I'm using this particular technology. So, Dan, you're in Salt Lake, and if I recall, last we talked, you were doing PI stuff. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
are you still doing that principally?
Yeah. So I'm 100% personal injury right now. My partner, he's probably like 70 personal injury and then 30 commercial litigation.
Got it. And so how are you doing?
We're doing good. I mean, the personal injury pipeline, right? I mean, we're probably not going to see any real effects for probably 6 months to 18 months, just because of the way the pipeline works in the industry. And so it's kind of interesting. We're just as busy as ever. We're not like a criminal defense attorney or a family law attorney.
Do you think it's because you're contingency and there's like really no reason not to go see you right now?
Well, so I guess I think it has more just with the workflow. So our new intake cases have slowed down, but usually when we intake a new case, they still have to treat. So that's, at least 3 months usually. And then sometimes in a wrongful death or a more catastrophic injury, we know what the damages are right away, but usually there's a lag time. And so the workflow that we're doing right now is from cases that we signed up 3 to 6 months ago. And so we're more worried about our workflow
6 months from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your personal injury cases are mostly, do you have a focus for types of cases that you're pulling in?
We do not really. I mean, we don't do a lot of slip and falls. We don't do just dog bites by their nature aren't very common. But the we do med mal and we do product liability. We do regular car accidents. So
Hmm. It is interesting that that idea of the delay of the repercussions. I'm curious. You're in a state that, if I recall, Utah. Did they even shut down yet? There was a whole thing I remember with is Herbert. Is that the Utah governor?
yeah, Governor Herbert, they haven't done a declaration where they're having any force of law that anyone needs to stay inside. He's basically just advised us or directed us to.
Right.
Um, Seems to be working. Our numbers have been declining the last several days. So
Mm. So, in terms of the what I've been trying to think about and reading a bunch about is how long does this last, right? And specifically in terms of economic consequences for this thing, how long does that last? And every study that I've read, it really comes down to what the pattern of the transmission is. So if it goes away, then things can change faster, obviously. But most of the studies I've been reading recently are saying it's going to be one of these. It's going to be up and down, and so we, in terms of regulation, in terms of trying to control it, are going to go on a similar track that we're really strict with rules, and then we get really loose and strict and loose and over again. Do you feel like? I wonder if in a state like Utah, where they haven't created these kinds of rules, I wonder if in a month from now, where there's not an obvious, because you didn't have an obvious on button, that means there's not an obvious off button either, right?
yeah,
Uh,
well, I mean, he definitely issued a directive like, hey, from now on, you should stay at home. They canceled schools.
okay.
Um,
So there was at least
so
some signals that, this is
yeah,
freaky. You
yeah,
guys stay home. And for you nerds who do not know, as the lone Utah Jazz fan in the Midwest, it was it was the Jazz team that
yep,
first was positive for this, and that the shutdown of the league. I talked about this last night. The shutdown of the league, which followed that, is what predicated all of the crazy response happened the next day when you start having sports leagues shut down. So in Utah, it's been in the public consciousness, I would assume, more than like in national Super Bowl champion Kansas.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as soon as Gobert, because he was the first one of the NBA players to test positive, as soon as that happened, it was like, oh, okay, well, this is
Yeah.
serious stuff.
Yeah. And it was really the next day because our kids, I think that was on a Wednesday or Thursday. And it was the day after that our kids were supposed to start spring break. And I remember turning to my wife that day and I was like, they're not going back to school. You might as well just,
Yeah,
and I didn't even know, if the school was going to close it down. Kansas was really early in terms of closing it down for the rest of the year. But I told her, I'm like, if they don't close school down, I'm withdrawing them. There's just we're not going to
yeah,
wait for the school to do this. And I think it probably was because I'm a Jazz fan, because I was paying close attention to this. So I think you're right. You'll probably get an off switch like that. But I was talking to my sister today, who works in a theater. They have a local theater in the Dallas area, and she was trying to figure out what's going to happen with this. And I was like, I don't think when they say it's okay to go back out, Nick is the worst. I don't think because they say, hey, you can go back out, that suddenly everybody's going to be in the theaters the next day, right? Does that?
no,
I mean, do you think that when this is, I'm thinking about your 6-month pipeline, right? In
yeah,
2 months, let's say when this thing is over, and they say when it's over temporarily, right? Whatever that means, that Utah, that Governor Herbert says, okay, you guys can go back outside, right? Come back out from under the rock. Do you think that pipeline's just going to restart, or what do you think will be the residual consequences for that?
we're lucky in the sense that we're not a high volume shop, so I'm less. I honestly am not that worried about the pipeline. We've um, like instead of signing up 7 cases this month, which is a pretty typical month, we've signed up 4.
Mm.
And so it's,
But 4 is
but
still enough to pay the bills, and
Yeah,
keep
yeah. I
things
mean,
going. Yeah.
we're not we're not worried about that.
Yep.
But to kind of answer your question, like there's a protest tomorrow. I think like several hundred people are going to meet at a park tomorrow to tell Governor Herbert that he's been too restrictive on on his mandates. And like I said, it hasn't been an official anything. It's been, hey, this is what has is wise and this is what you should do, but I'm not gonna arrest you or pull you off of a bus by force if you don't have a mask on,
Hmm.
like um
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. So, have you, as a PI lawyer, you're having to do a lot of, I assume, PI lawyers seem to pay for the most advertising and the most get out there money. Was that part of you guys' system? Have you changed any of your ads or any of your language for the media that you're putting out or the content you're putting out?
no, well, so we we don't pay for really any advertising. We very we have a very we it's not a referral, but basically they send us lead. We pay per lead kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and it's like I said, it's more catastrophic cases, so we don't we hardly spend any money on it
Huh.
at
That's
all.
interesting.
We're probably 90% referral based.
So you haven't had to change a darn thing, and you're not worried about anything. That's what I'm getting from you.
Well, I'm the one no, so I am worried because this is like insurance companies' best case scenario. They're sitting on a bunch of cash,
Mm.
and the only stick that we had was okay. Well, we'll go to trial, and for the foreseeable future, all trials have been canceled. Um, and when they do start up again, they're going to start with in custody criminal defendants, which obviously that makes sense. And so we set a trial date last week and normally it would have been like 2 months down the road, and we got a November trial date. And
Mm.
it wasn't a very complicated trial. It's only a 2-day trial. So that's the one thing I am worried about is
Mm.
is our lack of stick, I guess.
Yeah, because you're funding your cases, because your contingency, you've got to keep them moving, right? Or
Yep.
the cash flow starts to. So even if you have the same amount of intake, if you can't have the trial as a drop dead, this is going to turn into cash kind of moment, that could screw up your cash flow down the road. Are you guys doing anything to prepare for that possibility? Let's say worst case scenario, they were talking about it taking a year and a half for a vaccine to be widely available. Let's say it's mid next year before court schedules get to a regular, kind of clip. Anything you guys are thinking about trying to change in terms of how you operate to deal with that struggle?
Um, I mean, we've had a conversation with a client already where we've said, look, we normally this is what we would do. We would go to trial. Um, in this particular case, they took out some funding that's putting some outside pressure on them. Um,
Yeah.
and and so it's like, and they've made it a good offer, but it's not. It's just enough to to entice everybody, but it's not what we would normally be okay with.
Mm.
And so we've had to have that conversation once already. Um, but I don't anticipate that happening where they shut down trials for 18 months.
Right.
And if they do, then we've talked about, well, we'll just do bench trials,
Mm.
and we think we'll be able to do that over Zoom
Right.
or
Yeah, they'll
whatever
have
we.
to, right? Like they can't do this for a year and a half. I mean, there's just no way.
No, no. I mean there's already some. I know the criminal defense bar is possibly starting to file some speedy trial motions. Um, and that's going to be the question that really no one knows is, all right, we have fundamental constitutional rights. Does the pandemic trump that or no?
Well,
So
it's very interesting, and I appreciate your perspective. It sounds like, if I correct me if this summary is wrong, but it sounds like basically your pipeline is slower, but it's not dead. There's concerns about when you'll be able to cash things in because courts are kind of out of control right now. But it sounds like you're sort of just going forward, controlling what you can and letting the rest of it, do what it's going to do, right? Which is probably the only thing any of us can do.
yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you then, outside the law firm, on the personal side, is there anything that you've added or tried or habits that you think have worked out to help improve this situation for you? Anything you're doing with the family that makes more sense?
Yeah. So I'm, for the first 25 years of my life, I defined myself as an athlete, and then an injury in law school happened, and I got rather, we'll just say, robust. So I've tried to do the 100 push up a day challenge, and there's like a way to build up to that.
I
So
am not
that's
doing the 100 push-up a day challenge. I'm doing the
yeah,
I'm doing the 100 brownies a day challenge. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's a pretty rigorous challenge. Not a lot
that
of people
sounds
can.
way more fun.
Yeah, not a lot of people can meet that standard, but I'm doing
That
my
would,
best.
well, yeah, I definitely, I want to change, and I'm probably hitting 70 to 80% of that. I'm not 100% for sure. My wife is amazing, thank goodness, because we're having to homeschool the kids, and my son, that's hard for him. He's a very social person. Um, he's like me, that he needs that interaction, and he's going crazy. And his sisters are not helping, but luckily she's gotten schedules, and I think we're kind of hitting our stride here, hopefully.
Well, cool. I know you're in the same situation that all the rest of us are in, just sort of making it up as we go. Hopefully, you guys will give yourself some kindness. Thank you, Dan. If people want to reach out to you and maybe give you some of that social connection, the virtual high five, what's the best way to connect with you, Dan?
Yeah, Facebook is great. I check that pretty frequently. A good old fashioned email. My email is dan.garner@utahtriallawyers.com. And I wanted to add too is, I mean, if this would have happened 20 years ago, I technology and everything, the firm would not have been in a good place because
Right.
we're able to do DocuSign, we're able to do Zoom calls. I mean, I'm a part of several networking groups, and that's where a lot of my referrals come from. And we're just, instead of meeting in person, we're just meeting on Zoom. So that's a big
And
change.
as Nick, who is sort of a jerk, he posted the comment: the pandemic needs to end so that Mike, because now Mike goes live every single night, and Nick is tired of me, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm tired of myself, if I'm being honest, but I'm lonely,
Well, it's
Nick.
like I told my friend who also named Mike, is he was worried that Governor Herbert is going to remove the restrictions too soon. And I was like, hey, man, just stay inside if you want to stay inside.
Yeah, I'm very lonely. Nick never calls me anymore. He doesn't send me flowers, does not sing me love songs, none of those things. So, Nick, this is your fault. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, guys. All have a good night. Make sure that you go into the Lawyer Forward Facebook group where you already are. Go over to the events, which I'm pointing as if I know which direction I have no idea, but look on the left
This is
side
what
of the
Dan told me
screen,
to do.
whichever it is, and go to the events and join the event tomorrow lunchtime. We're going to hang with some really smart people. Let us know if we can do anything for you guys, and everybody have a good night. Do some push-ups.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, buddy.